Hi there, welcome. Today I want to talk about Xin, the heart-mind, as it pertains to Taoist alchemy practice. This term is an important term that occurs throughout Taoist alchemy texts and throughout the oral instructions that we use when we practice Taoist internal alchemy. The term has a long history within Chinese practice and thought. Now, the interesting thing about this term, which I pronounce xin in Mandarin, is that it has different layers of meaning. And literally, it means heart, as in the physical heart of our body. So this character, it literally means heart. However, by extension, it also means mind. And it's often used to mean mind and heart together interchangeably. So I thought I would unpack a little bit the various levels of meaning and how this term is used by practitioners, Taoist practitioners. So the first, there's basically 3 levels of meaning that I'm aware of that comes up when we're practicing internal alchemy in this term. So these 3 layers of meaning, let's put heart first, I mean physical heart here, and then mind, and then I'll save the 3rd one for a little bit later. Something I've learned from practicing with Wang Liping, it's very important to understand the context of that passage or sentence or word that we're looking at, because the context will determine what the meaning is. And when the context shifts, the meaning will shift. In other words, if we're talking about the body, and it can be the physical heart, right? So an example would be 心静 or 静心. I mean, you can do both, right? A heart mind is still. Or you can also do it this way, still the heart mind. And these meanings are different. This is a whole other talk, really. But when you have a verb in front, that means we are working to intentionally or using you-wei methods to still the heart mind. If we have 心静, and stillness here is not a verb, well, I'm not sure if it is a verb or not, but it's behind this here, then this is wu-wei. This is unintentional. We have achieved this state naturally. We're just in, the mind is still, or the heart mind is still. And this comes up a lot in Taoist texts and in the oral traditions. They're very tricky, those Taoists. They like to play word games. You know, they're like that old uncle you have that just loves to play crosswords and loves to do crosswords, right? They love to think about language and little riddles and how does language fit together. That's a Taoist for you. And so this is an example of how they mess around with stuff, right? And it's up to you to know this, right? This is a secret. Well, it was anyways. Oops. So the interesting thing for today when we're looking at something like this, and maybe I'll write out the actual English, right? So heart is still, or still the heart. So I'll just leave it as its literal translation, heart, right? So heart is still, this is a wu-wei stage, right? So this is where you have a natural, you have almost achieved this level of practice, right? Where your heart, your mind is still. This here is you're actively working to still the heart. This is a you-wei part of the practice. So the interesting thing is this here can refer to the physical heart, or it can refer to the mind. And it's important to know from context which it is referring to, because for the Taoists anyways, in our Taoist practice, because we're working so closely with the physical body, we are often working with the actual physical heart, right? Perhaps if this was a more Buddhist style of practice, you could just default to thinking of it in terms of mind. But for us, no, at least for what I've learned from Wang Liping, physical heart is something that we want to still. And so a good example is when we go into our practice, there's a certain place in the oral instructions, allow body and heart to become still. Now, it'd be very easy to take that phrase, allow body and heart to become still, and think of that heart as in mind, right? Mind and body. Mind and body need to be still. Makes sense. However, in the context of Taoist practice, especially when we're in a session and we're at the beginning preparing for the alchemical work ahead, yes, the mind needs to be still, but the heart itself, allow the heart, the physical heart, to become still. Not to stop beating. It's nice when the heart beats. I like the blood, but we can allow the heartbeats to become more regular, more slowed down, and become more stable. Later on, as we progress in our practice, as I'm sure some of you have, we can feel our heart, right? And we can feel when the heart is agitated or when it's stable and still. And so it's important to understand what sin we're talking about when we encounter this term in our practice, right? Is it the mind or is it the heart? And there's no, it's contextual, right? So it depends on what you're working on at that point, right? Now, the interesting thing about xin is the third meaning, and that meaning is center. Now, the lovely thing about this meaning here is it works in English, right? So heart, it can also mean center in English, right? The heart of the matter, the center of things, right? And so the third meaning here is probably one of the most important we use throughout the practice. And when we gather the mind, shou xin, if we're using the third meaning, it changes it, right? So what does that mean? To gather to the center. One of the things I've noticed with internal alchemy practice over the years is how spatially oriented it is. Because we're working with the physical body, it becomes very spatial. In other words, we have a distinct experience. I'm not sure if some of you have had the same experience, but we have distinct experience of our orientation in the physical world, right? Because we're dealing with the body so much. And so gathering into the center becomes a very central part of our practice, right? When I prepare to do my alchemy, each day, each session, then gathering into the center is a big part of what I do initially to prepare, right? Now, the interesting thing about gathering into the center, bringing ourselves into the center of our being, is it's literal. It's not just a poetic kind of fancy way of talking about something. You actually, when you get it right, you actually feel like you are in the center of your physical body, and your physical body is in the center of your universe. And your universe radiates out, and there's different spaces that go outwards from your body, and you feel like you are right in the center of that, right? And there is a term that comes up in Daoist in practice, at least in our lineage, and that is you are the sovereign of your domain. Again, it's more than just a poetic way of discussing things. When you get it right, you actually feel like you are inside your body looking outwards. Not inside your head, right? Because I think when we first start practicing, it's very easy to feel like we're in our head, because that's where our sense organs are, and they're arrayed outwards. For this, we feel like we're actually dropping down inside our torso, and then later on actually inhabiting that space, filling that space with our presence, but also sensing outwards from that space. So our perspective will change if we're able to go deep enough into the session, right? We'll have a perspective of actually looking out. Very interesting. I don't know how it happens. I don't understand it. But it's a profound part of the practice. Gathering into the center, coming into the center, and then from there, looking out into your domain. Yeah, so yeah, Xin, heart mind. This is just one of those terms I thought it would be helpful to unpack a little for us, for Taoist internal alchemists out there. I hope this is useful, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.